Mother Teresa's miracle, why she will soon become a saint. Winners and losers, how the budget deal will change everything from oil experts to renewable energy. Migrant crisis, more than 1 million people displaced, how the world is responding to Syrian refugees. The gift of giving, one little girl provides huge help. See her inspiring story. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Friday, December 18th, 2015. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn with your news now. Blessed Mother Teresa will soon be a saint. Pope Francis signed off on the miracle needed for her canonization. He made the decision yesterday on his birthday. Mother Teresa was highly regarded for her work serving the poor in Calcutta and winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Her faith touched Catholics and non-Catholics around the world. In St. Peter's Square, people are celebrating.
It's a very wonderful thing, especially she is always a good example to the world.
By the time she died, Mother Teresa's Missionaries of Charity had nearly 4,000 nuns and ran roughly 600 orphanages, homeless shelters, and clinics around the world. Alan Holdren, our Rome correspondent, joins us now. Alan, what a joyous time right now in Rome. There have been rumors for months that this could happen.
That's right, Lauren. It's official. Mother Teresa will be canonized. We don't have an official date yet. There are other rumors that would say it could take place on September the 4th, the day before her feast day, when the Vatican is already going to be celebrating workers and volunteers of mercy in a special Jubilee event. Tell me why she is being canonized. What is the miracle that has been validated? Well, Lauren, according to initial reports, it wasn't made official by the Vatican today, but the Italian bishop's official newspaper reported that it is the healing of a Brazilian man who had brain abscesses, was on the operating table. His surgery was delayed a half an hour, and his wife was in the hospital chapel praying for Mother Teresa's intercession. And when the doctors came in to give him the surgery, he was sitting up on the bed asking where he was and why he was there. He was healed. Unbelievable. You know, she has had such a big impact on so many people, the poor, those who are down on their luck and during their last moments of life. But she's also had such a big impact on popes, on St. John Paul II and on Pope Francis. Tell us about that. That's right. We hear stories all of the time. It's almost like St. John Paul II himself. Everybody who was in the presence of Mother Teresa felt something and has to share it. There's a cardinal that's in charge of St. Peter's Basilica just behind here. He once said in a homily on the anniversary of the beatification of Mother Teresa that he owed his vocation to her. Like anybody who ever met her has a story. Anybody who ever heard about her probably also has a story, Lauren. It seems like there's a lot going on behind you. What's happening? We've got the official tree lighting ceremony of the 32-meter, 100-foot tall Bavarian tree for Christmas here in St. Peter's Square. It's a great celebration. Happens every year, Lauren. And I think you have a special guest, do you not? Yeah, I do. I've got my family here, 2 little kids, 4.5, 2.5. I couldn't coax them over here in order to get in front of the camera. But Merry Christmas from all of us here. Merry Christmas to you. Thank you so much, reporting from Rome. Thank you. President Obama made an appearance in the press briefing room today for his annual end-of-year question and answer session. He touted his accomplishments and had a message for Americans about ISIS.
It is very difficult for us to detect lone wolf plots or plots involving a husband and wife in this case. It's not that different from us trying to detect the next mass shooter.
He also spoke out about the future of his party and came out bullish on his successor.
I think we will have a strong Democratic nominee. I think that Democratic nominee will win. I think I will have a Democratic successor, and I will campaign very hard to make that happen.
He also praised Republican Speaker Paul Ryan in particular for getting the budget deal done. And he's on his way to Hawaii for vacation. The president will stop for a few hours in San Bernardino. He's meeting behind closed doors with victims' families. 14 people were killed earlier this month in a terror attack. And it's official. We have a national budget. President Obama just signed the $1.1 trillion spending bill into law. Our Jason Calvi is at the Capitol. Jason?
Lauren, the spending bill keeps the government open through September 2016. It is the work of compromise with losses and wins for both Democrats and Republicans.
The bill is passed
In the House and Senate.
The vote is 65 yeas, 33 nays.
The final votes of a rambunctious year, a burst of bipartisan energy in a deeply divided Congress.
We've passed more major legislation in a few weeks than we have in a few years.
It was a deal, it was a compromise, and that's what we do.
One of the budget winners is the military, with big spending boosts. The package also dishes out $680 billion in tax cuts over the next decade. Democrats celebrate higher domestic funding and the earned income tax credit for people with lower incomes.
That lifts the whole economy when people are able to take that check and go into the store, get the car repaired, get the new tires, do whatever it is that they need to do with it.
A Republican victory allowing crude oil exports.
I want to see us have a full and broad all of the above energy plan, and I think exporting our oil will bring jobs, and I'm very hopeful.
But the third highest ranking Senate Republican voted against the budget deal today. He tells us he wanted to defund Planned Parenthood and limit Syrian refugees entering the country.
Those are things that we had hoped to have in there. Those are both really important provisions, and yeah, it's unfortunate. It didn't have a lot of leverage going into the end. I understand that, but I hope that we can revisit those issues next year.
With the budget deal passed, lawmakers rush home for Christmas break or return to the campaign trail. And presidential candidates Bernie Sanders, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz all voted no on the budget. Senator Marco Rubio was a no-show. Lauren?
What's on deck when lawmakers return in the new year, Jason?
Well, for the House, it will be defunding Planned Parenthood. That measure already went through and passed the Senate, but it does set up a promised presidential veto.
Thank you very much, Jason Calvi at the Capitol. Topping our stories from around the world. The European Union vows to increase the fight against terrorism. EU leaders met today to discuss better coordination for border checks. They're also considering fast-tracking proposals to clamp down on illegal gun sales, especially high-powered semi-automatic weapons. And the angry backlash from an Arabic lesson forced a Virginia school district to close today. Last week, a teacher in Verona, Virginia, asked her students to practice calligraphy and write a statement in Arabic. It translated to, "There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." The teacher's lesson was drawn from instructional material that also includes Judeo-Christian assignments. The teacher declined to comment, and there are calls for her firing. President Obama is leaving for vacation, but before he did, he spoke to us in the briefing room. John Christopher Bua can help us put it all in perspective. He's a White House commentator, political analyst, and an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Boy, that room was packed, wasn't it?
I'm going to try to put it into perspective.
Well, you'll do a great job.
There was a lot going on there, and it was packed. My goodness,
I know.
We had a full
Well, what
house.
did you take from this? I mean, he really didn't make news out of this, but he did tout his accomplishments.
Well, he touted his accomplishments. He has 1 year left in office, and on some level, I think he'd like it to be next year at this time. So he could kind of wash his hands and say, hey, no major troops on the ground, no commitments. We're not going to go into war in Syria or Yemen. And he was clear about that. And Gaddafi, brought up Gaddafi in Libya, and he brought up Assad and how he spoke to Putin years ago about not getting rid of Assad or making sure that it's still a bit ambiguous. But I think the president would like to go away for a couple of weeks and have it a very peaceful Christmas and a very peaceful and joyous and holy New Year.
Right,
Indeed.
wouldn't we all? So he also did something I don't see him do very often, which was praise the Republicans for getting this budget deal done.
I think he was really relieved that the Republicans helped him get a budget done. There was some compromise. You know what it's like here in Washington, little give and take. He even mentioned it. That's the way it works, and it was a good deal. And you know, the Kennedys used to say, 50% of the people hate me, 50% of the people love me. We must be doing something right.
Right. And they also used to say, not the Kennedys, but it is also said that you only have one friend in Washington, and it's your dog.
Yes. Okay. If you feed it properly.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And the European Union vows to increase the fight against terrorism. And it looks like we are not going to go to that story, but we are going to talk about the White House being swept up in the craze over Star Wars. The First Lady hosted a special screening of the movie today for children of fallen military members. Star Wars: The Force Awakens is already breaking records for movie ticket sales. Analysts say the movie could make $200 million this weekend alone. And fans of the royal family will enjoy this Christmas picture. Britain's Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are playing outdoors at Kensington Palace with children, Prince George and Princess Charlotte. The photo was taken in Cambridge. Little George starts Montessori school next month. Coming up, Middle East exodus. World leaders seek help for refugees. How ISIS is complicating things. A refurbished homeless shelter. Pope Francis pays a call. Give yourself fully to God. He will use you to accomplish great things on the condition that you believe much more in His love than in your own weakness. That's a quote from Blessed Mother Teresa, whose sainthood will now be recognized. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Members of the UN Security Council have agreed to a resolution on a peace plan for Syria. Wyatt Goolsby joins us with more on the negotiations. Wyatt.
Yeah, Lauren, some are calling this resolution a rare gesture of unity. Diplomats from UN Security Council countries remain divided on several key issues, including what role the Syrian president should play in the peace plan.
Secretary of State John Kerry hosting envoys from 20 countries, one of several attempts today to see if there is enough agreement to broker a ceasefire between rebels and pro-government forces. The fate of Syrian President Bashar Assad remains a divisive issue. Russia and Iran say he should stay. The U.S. and Western countries want him out. ISIS is complicating the conflict. It still holds a strong presence in Syria. The war has forced hundreds of thousands of people to flee their homeland. According to an international report, the number of refugees and migrants entering Europe will top 1 million by next week, more than 4 times last year's number. Refugees still in the region say ISIS is committing genocide.
They made a false accusation against my uncle, and ISIS beheaded him and didn't deliver us back his corpse. This is the hardest thing for me. Every day they make accusations so they can behead people.
Countries like Canada have promised to take in 25,000 refugees by February, but Americans remain divided on whether the U.S. should welcome Syrian refugees. Earlier this month, Catholic Charities Indianapolis, working with the U.S. Catholic Bishops' Conference, resettled a Syrian family of 4. That despite calls from Indiana Governor Mike Pence not to bring in Syrian refugees out of security concerns. Gabrielle Neal, who heads the refugee program for Catholic Charities, says every person they bring into the U.S. goes through an extensive vetting process, often taking several years.
The latest family that came was reunified with their family, and especially around this season, I think everybody can appreciate wanting to see your loved ones and spending times with them, and so it was really important to them.
Gabrielle Neal also told me how important it is for Catholics to live their faith by welcoming those most in need. Diplomats at the UN, meanwhile, hope that today's peace plan will help create free and fair elections in the next year and a half. Lauren?
When do you think the talks will start, Wyatt?
Well, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says he's optimistic talks could start as early as January.
Thank you very much. Wyatt Goolsby reporting. The administration this week has ramped up its discussions with people of all faiths in light of the contentious political rhetoric about Muslims. Joining us now from the White House is Melissa Rodgers. She is the executive director of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a busy week for you at the White House. Can you tell us about some of the events?
Sure. Well, we've had a number of events this week that celebrate the rich religious pluralism that we have in the United States and talk about how we can preserve that tradition moving forward. So we've met with people of all different faiths and none in different settings, and it's really been an inspiring week because we've heard so much about the appreciation for this tradition, what we've learned from each other, and how we can make our country even stronger moving forward.
Why is it so important right now to have these kinds of dialogues?
Well, it's always a good time for us to be engaged across faiths and across beliefs because, again, we learn so much from one another and we have this great American tradition of uniting across our differences. But particularly when communities are fearful because of some discrimination that's been going on, or when there's a time at which they might feel like they might not be as understood as they would like, we have to redouble our efforts at that time to make sure that we're reaching out and that we're standing behind one another, that we're creating solidarity across the many faiths and beliefs that exist in America.
Which is what we've seen with Donald Trump, the presidential candidate, calling for a ban on Muslims entering the country. I would love to know what your office has in store for next year.
Yes, well, we're really looking forward to next year. The president is very excited about making sure that we run through the tape at the end of the administration, that we don't stop until the very last minute. And so we have a very full agenda for next year. In our office, we'll be doing more of this work, continuing our effort at dialogue across religious differences. We'll be doing more work on serving people in need by building partnerships with groups both at home and abroad. And that just spans a huge number of areas, whether it's helping people get better health care, helping veterans get their benefits, working with development groups so that people who are subject to disasters, whether it's at home or abroad, have assistance not only from the government, but from the government in partnership with faith and community groups. So that is the ongoing work of the White House, and we will continue that work until the very last minute that we're here, because we know how important it is to the president and to the country as a whole.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know your schedule is very busy. I look forward to working with you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you too.
Up next, the war against Christmas isn't real. A 9-year-old girl makes good how she made Christmas come true for thousands. Pope Francis is celebrating the Jubilee of Mercy at a renovated homeless shelter. He opened and walked through the new holy door of the Caritas Hostel and met with volunteers and workers. Pope Francis made an emotional appeal for the needy. He says heaven cannot be paid for with money. It is earned through love for others. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. More people are turning to online shopping this year. First data says sales growth for traditional stores is up 2%, while online sales rose 4.6%. Total spending is also up this year. Joining us now is Christopher Bourne. He's a professor of religion and culture at the Catholic University of America. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
This holiday season,
Yes.
or should I say Christmas season,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Is there a war on Christmas? We hear that so often in the media.
Sure, and what you can see if you're looking at poll numbers, you're looking at people, is people perceive that there's a declining influence of religion on culture, and so it's just this time of year is when it really comes to the head, and people really start focusing on with these little skirmishes at local government levels, things like that, where there's a perception that there's a war on Christmas, but really it's just looks like there's a declining influence of religion on culture, and the poll numbers back that up.
Right. Well, what does the history show? I mean, over the last 100 years, have we seen this rising, or are these polls that are showing the increased secularization just a new thing?
Well, the first war on Christmas was actually the Puritans. The Puritans, they didn't want to celebrate Christmas at all. And so then later on, when you get, Christmas was a huge, huge party, and Puritans were against that. So really what you see then is in the 1820s, 1827, is you see the advent of of Santa Claus through the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" poem. So that comes, and so once you have that, Christmas has turned into more of a children's holiday. And so that's when the commercialization gets wrapped into that, and so that it progresses along from that time period until you get today, where it's become a very commercial holiday, and so people are also saying it's a war on Christmas because it becomes so commercial.
Right, and I think, tell me, we were talking a little bit about polls, but tell me, a growing number of Americans are now religiously unaffiliated, according to a Pew Research Center poll, and that number was 16% in 2007, and now it's 23% in 2014. That seems like a big jump. Are we going to see, moving forward into the future, an even bigger jump?
Well, what's funny about that number is also in that Pew Research, a previous one, 2013, that they did, 86% of the religiously unaffiliated celebrate Christmas. So and how you break out the religiously unaffiliated is really interesting, because even though they're unaffiliated, they still pray, they still believe in God, many of them. So really you have a very small slice of that religiously unaffiliated that are truly secular, truly atheist. So I think it might grow a little bit as religious institutions decline and lose their influence on society, but it doesn't mean people are becoming less religious. It's just changing the way they are being religious.
Let's just throw it out here. What would happen if we just got rid of all the presents at Christmas time? Like, I don't know, the Grinch would come and steal them?
Well, I think that would be great, and that would be in line with Catholic social teaching. The last three popes have come out definitively against the consumerism and the dangers of materialism, the dangers of unfettered capitalism. And I think parishes can certainly rally around that, and instead of focusing on giving presents, focusing on the true meaning of Christmas and the birth of Christ and celebrating that religiously, but also celebrating it at the larger cultural level and not just at the religious level.
We all need to be Cindy Lou Who's, is that what we're
That's
saying?
right.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us from the Catholic University of America, Christopher Bourne. America.
It's a pleasure being here.
It's exactly 1 week until Christmas. Many children have already sent their lists to Santa, but tonight, Catherine Zeltner introduces us to one Alabama girl who wants to give more than she receives. Catherine, what a good story.
Lauren, Jordan McNeil is a typical 9-year-old girl. She likes the color pink and arts and crafts, but Jordan is not letting her young age stop her from helping the needy around the world. This giant project has small beginnings.
We have 5,161 shoebox gifts.
Fourth grader Jordan McNeil has collected thousands of shoebox gift packages. It's all part of Samaritan Purse's Operation Christmas Child, which sends gifts to children overseas dealing with famine, disease, or war.
This is an opportunity to provide them with a simple gift to let them know someone cares. Regardless of what happens in your life, there's someone that cares.
I felt sad when I found out that Operation Christmas Child shoebox gifts are often the first gift kids ever receive. I know that God likes it when we help others and put others before ourselves.
With the help of her parents, Jordan created an online challenge to collect as many gifts as possible. She also called on local businesses to donate.
It's been really hard, but it's really fun.
Each box is filled with toys and toiletries. Jordan places a special handmade bracelet in each one she packs. Volunteers recently joined the McNeil family to make sure this special delivery ships off in time for Christmas. From the assembly line to homes in need, 9-year-old Jordan says her dreams to give have no limits.
Little kids can dream really big because God is amazing and He is really big. And there isn't anything we can't do if we trust in Him.
When I asked Jordan the meaning of Christmas, she said, "It's Jesus' birthday, but I don't know how old He is." Jordan hopes when kids receive these gift boxes, they feel joy and God's love.
Well, that's what we feel just watching this story. Now, this isn't the first time she's done something like this.
No, Jordan has been helping with charity since she was 7 years old. She's always seen others in need and wanted to help out.
What a wonderful, beautiful Christmas story. Catherine, thank you so much for bringing it to us. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Lauren Ashburn. We leave you tonight with a view of the Vatican's Christmas tree, which was lit today. Good night, and God bless.